Welcome to this episode of Chakmah Choter as part of the YAHOWAH blog. I'm your host, Craig Winn. If I seem a little shocked at the moment, it's only because I am. On the way down to the library studio, I caught a post that was presented by a news source that showed a recent poll of Americans where only 6%, 16%, 16%, were in approval of America taking 4 hours out of its military time to fly a couple of B-2s over Fordo and take out the Iranian nuclear bomb production there. 16%. What's so stunning about that is that there can be nothing about burying Fordo that would be in conflict with Trump's negotiation to prevent Iran from having a nuclear bomb. The only purpose of Fordo, the reason it's buried 300 feet beneath a mountain, is because they wanted to protect their bomb-making capability and to hide it from everyone. I mean, after all, today, Israel took out the Iranian heavy water plant that makes tritium. The purpose of tritium is to increase the yield of a nuclear bomb. But Fordo is buried too deep for any of the bunker penetrating bombs that are part of the Israeli arsenal. And the 30,000-pound Moabs cannot be carried on a F-35 or F-15, which is the aircraft, the fighters that Israel is using to preclude Iran from annihilating it. And so it would take about 2 hours flight time from wherever these B-2s are stationed to fly over Iraq, high enough to be way above any missile fire. We know that the skies above Iran are free of anti-aircraft fire anyway, and drop a couple of Moabs. Yeah, probably 2 hours in, 2 hours out. What are the planes doing besides getting sunbaked? On Diego Garcia, they out there with getting a suntan, but they can't be used, of course, to protect Israel. Well, according to 84% of you. Now, I know that Marxists have served as pimps now for Muslims. We know that Muslims want Israel destroyed. And we know Marxists want what Muslims want. They're the new BFFs. But the MAGAs have also turned on Israel. Their anti-Semitism now is showing and raging. 16%. And there can be no question that it's an easy mission. No question that America is the only country with the tools to do it. No question that it would take America about 4 hours round trip to accomplish it. No question that eliminating Fordo would be consistent with what everything the world has said, that Iran can't have a bomb. 16%. I'd be ashamed, except I'm not an American anymore. I'm an expat, and never been prouder of the fact that I am an expat. I can assure you I will do everything in my power not have to go stateside again. Rest in peace, America. You don't deserve to survive. Now, there is something that might change all of that, however. Now that the Trumpster and Witkoff are having their chit-chats again. In fact, they've chatted more in the last couple of days than they have in the 8 weeks of the charade of negotiations in terms of the foreign minister of Iran and the bribed golfing buddy of Donald Trump, Steve Witkoff. Yeah, they've actually spent more time on the phone in the last 2 days than they had spent having direct conversations in the previous 8 weeks of the negotiations. And Iran is saying, "Oh yeah, man, we might consider, some kind of a deal, maybe, but you have to stop the Iranians the Israelis from bombing us. Stop them. Tell them they can't do that anymore. We don't like it. And then maybe, we'll talk. We'll see if we can negotiate something. We already told you we're not getting rid of our uranium. We've already told you we're not going to stop enriching, but we can still talk, can't we?" Well, the Iranians double down today to say that maybe what they need to do and will do is to close the Strait of Hormuz. Well, that would preclude the United Arab Emirates, Trump's BFF. Qatar is BFFFF. Saudi Arabia is also his bribing buddy. The Kuwaitis, too, from being able to load their wallets with dollars from shipping oil through the Strait of Hormuz. Man, I can imagine to keep the money flowing to Trump's financial partners. Oh, man, you got to bring out the B-2s for that. Maybe even the B-1s. Heck, why not the B-52s? They probably were used in the parade, but if they're not all tired with their wings, drooping down, why not the B-17s? Bring them out too. Call in the Marines. Hell, why not? Can't be shutting down the Strait of Hormuz, can we? I've just discussed it. It's appalling how overtly anti-Semitic the world has become. I call it the 3 M's now. It is the Marxists, the Muslims, and the MAGAs. All disgusting, all repulsive, all in opposition to God's people. But this is what we're told to expect. We're a year away from the time of Israel's troubles, and we were told prophetically that it was going to be worse for Jews than at any time in their history. And oh, by the way, it's been really bad for Jews almost all the way through their history. And oh, by the way, they have exacerbated their own problem. Now, if we return to Chakmah, Choter, and where we were in our last program, we were reviewing Numbers, Bamidbar 11. It is the most surprising narrative maybe in the Torah. There's this notion that if you speak negatively about Jews, that you must be anti-Semitic. And clearly there's a lot of people out there that are anti-Semitic, but one thing you would not do is you would not accuse Moses, or YAHOWAH, the God of Israel, of being anti-Semitic, would you? I don't think so. But what both of them had to say about the children of Israel, they said they were impossible. That no one could relate to them, no one could lead them, no one could get through their thick skulls. They were obnoxious, they were rebellious, they were embittered, they're cantankerous. And so that's where we were in the narrative, and it got so bad that Moshe said, since I can't do this, since no one can do this, if you have any compassion for me, please just kill me. Death is better than being associated with these people and trying to lead them. And so YAHOWAH had already shown that he was in agreement with Moshe, because even before Moshe's meltdown, YAHOWAH was out burning everything around the encampment. Just he was so frustrated and angry with the children of Israel, so disappointed in him. His righteous indignation scorched everything around them. Scorched earth. So YAHOWAH didn't tell Moshe, oh, come on, they're not that bad. Because they were. YAHOWAH didn't say, come on, pep talk, we can do this together. We're in this together. We've come this far. Well, they hadn't come very far at all. They were only 3 days out of Joram. And they had already told God to go away, shut up, never to talk to them again. So, well, they really weren't in this together anymore. And so Yahweh's approach was, okay, I'm going to come up with something here that at least get your mind off of it. It's not going to do any good, but from this point, I think you can suck it up and we'll get them to the promised land, and then they're on their own. So he said, I want you to gather 70 elders around the tent. And then God, who was not speaking directly to them, told Moshe to tell them, and to the people say, become set apart and special, dedicated, uniquely separated from what is currently popular, particularly in the future. And then when that happens, you will be nourished by the Bashar, the human herald at that time. This is Israel's problem. It was their problem then. It is their problem now. They aren't set apart. Israelis are more political and more religious per capita than probably any other people. And since religion and politics are the single most, the two most common influences amongst humans, you are exceedingly common if you're religious or political. And the only solution, according to Yahowah, is to become uncommon, which means you have to stop being religious and political if you're going to have any future at all. And even in my case, as the human herald at this time, I'm only going to communicate to and resonate with those who are uncommon, those who are set apart, those who disavow religion and politics. It is the only solution. Now, by contrast, you have wept and wailed, moaning and crying in the ear of Yahowah. The difference is what you're set apart unto Yahowah and set apart from the human family. Your attitude just changes. You become joyful around Yahowah. It's, I said, I'm delighted to be an expat. I'm happy as I can be here on our island. And so very glad that I'm not in that commonality of religious and political America, because that's all the children of Israel had done up to this point, and it is all that the world's going to do from here on in. Weep and wail, moan and cry. Although the difference is the children of Israel were doing it in the ear of Yahowah, and Yahowah's not listening anymore. So by contrast, you have wept and wailed, moaning and crying in the ear of Yahowah to ask, who is this nurturing Bashar herald for us? Because it was better in Mitzrayim, the confining and troublesome subjugation. When you are religious, you are bound by the edicts of that religion, and most are stifling. There's probably none more rules-oriented than Judaism. And Christianity, and particularly Roman Catholic, has so many rules too. The Roman Catholic Church controlled everyone's lives. It was the feudal system. They influenced the lords and the kings, and the lords and the kings controlled the serfs. And in Islam, everyone is a slave to Allah. Islam means submission. Religion is based on the Latin word, the Roman language's term for ligament, means to bind, binding the bones together. And religion would be to rebind. This is God's view, and that's how you become subject to troublesome subjugation, is that you're bound to religion, and that's what the people wanted. They were religious. They liked having their lives controlled. They did not like the freedom they had in Yahowah. We have total freedom in Yahowah. We have free will and the ability to do whatever we wish to do, and we have the choice to serve with Yahowah or not, and how we're going to go about doing that. And the children of Israel said, nope, we want to be under political and religious subjugation. That was better for us. And that's what they've done to themselves, and it is what exists to this day. Of course, with no religion having more rules than Judaism. And very few countries, by the way, are more bureaucratic with more rules than Israel. So therefore, Yahowah will, at the appropriate time, provide for you and on your behalf the human herald, the Bashar. And then at that time, you will be nourished. He's done what he said he would do. The human herald is Dod's herald. He's Yahweh's voice. He is the observant foreigner. He is the branch that gives new life to the fallen stump of Yisrael. He is the Zeroah, the one cultivating the harvest. He is Yada. And he is here. He's speaking to you now. This is Yahweh's solution. What God is essentially saying is that Moshe gave up on you. I have given up on you. You told me to go away and never talk to you again. Well, that's all fine. I have really no interest in talking to you. You're miserable, and you haven't changed. You're still religious. You're still erasing my name. You're still bearing my Torah under your Talmud and even calling your Talmud a Torah. You know, you're disgusting. I want no part of you anyway. So, we have kind of a mutual standoff here. But unfortunately for Yahowah, fortunately for the children of Israel, God made a promise that he would have 7 Moed Mikra. He's only fulfilled 3 of them. Yahowah made a promise to Abraham that he would restore his relationship with his descendants. He hasn't done that yet. He's told us through the prophets that he will renew his covenant. It's not yet occurred, but it will. And so Yahowah has provided now at the appropriate time on behalf of the children of Israel a human herald, so that those who are open to God's testimony can be nourished by him. Your choice. The promise has been made. The promise has been kept. And here we are. And while we can and should commend God for doing as he said he would, and for the benefit of his people, what are we to make of the children of Israel who had the audacity to lie to God and say that he was treating them worse than the Egyptian taskmasters, when they were slaves, when they were enduring apartheid and even genocide? I mean, it was as rude as it was ridiculous. Why say something so stupid? But there is a benefit even in belligerence, because now when attacked by rabbis and their ilk for trying to liberate Jews from themselves and their contrarian attitudes, my retort is that they are responding similarly to the way that they attacked God and Moshe. Say, thank you very much. I'm in good company because you said the same kind of thing to Moshe. So I'm delighted to be their associate in this regard. Now, as we approach this next statement, the following numbers might all be poetic license. But if not, It is instructive to note that one God chose one man, and the two have initially collaborated for 5 plus 20 years, just 2001 through 2026, and 2 plus 10 plus 20, 32 years overall, 2001 to 2033, all while focused on the two Moedim that this one man would fulfill, with the most important role occurring on day one of the 2 plus 7, 2 plus 5 equals 7th, month as part of the 2 plus 5, 7 total. And on Towrah, we are explicitly told that, and this by Yeshaya in the 17th chapter, that there will be 2 or 3 gleaned on the uppermost branch of Yehudim, and 4 or 5 from the Israel branch, which has been cut away. So unlike the morsel of meat that has no lasting value or benefit, the Bashar Human Herald will provide the ad restoring witness to the eternal testimony. He will do so during the Chodesh or Kodesh Yomem, the days of renewal and restoration on the first day of the month, also known as Teruah, the day of the herald. And as a result, he will bestow the Asher benefits of the relationship while Yatzah leading the final exodus. This one away from the animosity and rancor of Jews towards Yahweh. But as has been the case, most of the Israelites will see their godsend, the Nakri, this observant and responsive foreigner, as a zerah, as a nauseating foreigner and loathsome stranger. But now I'm getting a little ahead of God's story. Let's listen. Not for one day will you be continuously and abundantly fed and nourished, and not for 2 days, nor for 5 days, not for 10 days or for 20 days, but forever, by the restoring witness to the eternal testimony during the days of renewal and restoration on the first day of the month, until the restoring witness to the benefits of the relationships comes forth, and he leads this exodus before your very presence because of your resentment and animosity. Although he will be, for a time, perceived as a nauseating foreigner and a loathsome stranger by you. This is on account of your failures to pay attention, and because surely you have rejected and spurned, avoided any association with, and despised, even loathed as vile, while showing contempt for Yahweh, who, for the benefit of the relationship, has drawn near and is in your midst, while you have wept and wailed, moaning and groaning before his presence, to say, for what and why then did we come out participating in this exodus from Mitzrayim, from confinement within the crucibles of oppression? Bamidbar, Numbers 11:20. The reason the Bashar Human Herald is providing the ad, restoring witness, to the eternal testimony during the Kodesh Yomem, days of renewal and restoration, on the first day of the month, is to bestow the Asher, the benefits of the relationship, upon those Yatzah engaged in the final exodus, because of their Ya'an, failure previously to pay attention, along with their prior Ma'as, rejection of God. He will be leading them away from their animosity and rancor toward Yahweh, even as they view him as a Zerah, nauseating foreigner, a loathsome stranger, because, well, this will be their last opportunity to Yatzah, to either be withdrawn from their self-imposed Mitzrayim religious subjugation, or to remain in it. Well, Moshe may have been a little delayed on the uptake. It was not without purpose, and he was aware that even among 600,000, there wasn't a Bashar herald in the bunch. And since he realized that Yahweh promised to provide one to resolve this current calamity, he was looking. So then Moshe said, I am in the midst of these 600,000 people on foot, whom to show the way to walk, such that you yourself have said, a human herald I will provide for them, so that they could be nourished. The days of renewal and restoration on the first day of the month. Where's the flock? With the lamb, as well as the herd with the bull. Ha son wa bakar, to die, slaughtered and sacrificed, beaten and killed for them, such that he is discovered and available for them. Or is it as if all that grows, even as fish of the waters, are to be gathered in and harvested for them, so that he is found and experienced by them? These are riveting words when we consider their import. It isn't an accident that Sion and Bakar, addressing a lamb and a bull, were both singular and masculine in this prior statement. The lamb that would be provided is Dod, and the bull is Yada, the king who fulfilled Pesach, and his herald who will fulfill Towrah. Further, their willingness to sacrifice their lives and die, beaten by the beast, one by Rome, the other by Hasatan, is advanced through Shakat, which not only conveys all of these things, but is also very sparingly used. Rather than conveying the idea of being slaughtered, as would be the case if a bashar was to be interpreted as meat rather than herald, Shakat speaks of being killed by being beaten to death. And that was and will be the fate of the lamb and the bull on the Moedim of Pesach and Towrah. Now, do you understand why, when Yahweh asked me to engage in this process, and we embarked on a completely unique form of translation, never been done before, an amplified translation that have the words and that convey the most essential part of the message in bold, followed by an italicized form of the Hebrew word that is general enough it can be looked up in search engines, with an amplified translation within the parenthetical. which is something that no one had ever done before, unique to our enterprise throughout Yada Yahowah. It was unique, too, that every word would be scrubbed of the diacritical markings of the rabbis, the Masoretes in the 11th century, and returned to the core letters themselves so that we could look at every word that is appropriate and every possible meaning. It's the only translation that takes into account the Dead Sea Scrolls, and every place they are different than the Masoretic text. But there's something else about what I'm sharing with you that heretofore had never accompanied a translation, and that is these insights that are derived from it. For me to go through each word like this and say, the lamb and the bull were singular, and the word for them being killed was to be beaten to death. And then to make the connections between Dod as the Passover lamb and Yada as the Adamah Parah of Towrah. It is in this combination of amplified translations corrected to the Dead Sea Scrolls with copious explanations and accompanying insights that make Yada Yahowah so powerful, so unique, so unlike anything that has ever been compiled and offered previously, and done in such a way that you can verify every word of it for yourself. This is one of those lessons. Yahowah inspired Moshe to ask when the lamb and bull will matzah be revealed and discovered, obtained, offered, and experienced. And while the answer would be Passover in year 4000 Yah and the day of the herald in year 6000 Yah, 33 CE and 2033, it is likely that these insights were for us to deduce, celebrate, and share, because no one has highlighted them previously. As we have considered, dag, which is commonly rendered fish, is from an unused root which actually addresses growth. Further, by this time, Moshe was well east of the Gulf and thus nowhere near a yam sea, suggesting that dam yam was to be understood the same way that we would grow as a result of the great waters, which would cascade off of the Temple Mount and from beneath the bull during the fulfillment of Teruah as the lamb watches from above. This is then reinforced by the fact that this all pertains to an asaf, a harvest, the final ingathering for the children of Yisrael. It is something the remnant of Yisrael will matzah, experienced at this time. Should there be any doubt as to the appropriateness of this interpretation, Yahowah reaffirms that we are on the right track in the anticipation of a Ketzar harvest, one that he will orchestrate. So God asks his faltering liberator. Therefore, Yahowah said to Moshe, is Yahowah's influence to reap a harvest cut short, lacking? Is he deprived of the ability to gather in? So then you will see and perceive. At a point in time, you will witness whether he will be selected, choose to engage, be encountered by you all, and succeed. if it will happen and whether you will meet him. Call imperfect, Joseph, third person, masculine, singular. You will determine if my word is or is not. Midbar in the wilderness, Numbers 11:23. Whoa. Thank you, God. You do not mess around. You are direct. You are bold. You are blunt. I aspire to emulate every aspect of your approach. I love it. There are many reasons I don't question or challenge Yahweh. And you will see that I never challenge him. And I haven't questioned him in probably 15 years was the last time I said, boy, I don't understand why you would do it that way. And if we have time one of these days, I'll tell you the last time that I questioned Yahweh. But, just in summary form, it was a lot of work, a lot of time to come up with a concise understanding of the 5 terms and 5 benefits of the covenant and how the 5 benefits of the covenant were provided through the Moed Mikre, particularly the first 3, and what each of those steps along the way actually mean in the lives of God's people. It was a lot of work to come up with the dates that each Moed Mikre had been and would be fulfilled. I spent 15 years figuring out that Dode was the actual Messiah and the Son of God, our former and returning king. And even more, deducing that he fulfilled Pesach, Matzah, and Bakorim in his second of 3 lives. And so one of the things that I bickered about was to say, God, couldn't you have made this a little bit easier? And he says, no, of course not. I didn't want anyone to figure it out until it needed to be known. It needs to be known now. You figured it out. What are you complaining about? Pretty straightforward. I don't want to make it easy. I'm not looking for a bunch of numbskulls to tramp through heaven, bringing their religious and political rubbish with them. I'm not looking for a huge crowd. I'm looking for the best among you, not the most among you. Isn't it more fun to have figured it out? Don't you have an appreciation for why it's so important that it be figured out at this time and communicated in this way? And look what you gain in terms of credibility with my people, to be the first person ever to put the whole picture together from beginning to end and have all of these details form this beautiful portrait that I'm offering, and that you're now in a position to convey it when no one else could. It's a very good thing. Okay. That was my last argument with God. He won. I was delighted he won, actually. It makes a lot of sense. But the fact of the matter is, I don't question God anymore. I don't challenge Yahweh. And this is one of the many reasons why. Within the parameters he has set for himself, such as being consistent and reliable, Yahweh can do whatever he has promised. 2 Katzar harvests remain to be fulfilled. So Yahweh posed a rhetorical question regarding the likelihood that they would transpire as foretold. Now, I have told you that it is my opinion that God could have and should have done better than me. And that if he was looking for, and he was, a observant foreigner, if he was looking for, and he was, a Yada, someone who knows, if he was looking for, and he was, a Bashar herald who would represent his beloved son, if he was looking for, and he was, a final Zeroah that would cultivate these 2 remaining harvests, and he did find exactly what he was looking for, then so be it. Then this is what he wanted. This is what he talked about he was going to do. And he's talking here specifically about the Bashar herald and what he would have to perform to achieve this. on behalf of Dode, and that he would be the one who would announce all of this, and that he would be the one to bring it to fruition so that Yahweh would achieve what he wanted, which is a productive harvest. God is saying, watch. I'm going to do exactly what I said I was going to do. The most amazing thing of all is he introduced his name through a person who stuttered. He took away the sting of death and the penalty associated with our religious guilt by way of his beloved Son, who cowered and cried during the insurrection by his own son. And now, through this 70-year-old goy, he is fulfilling the promise to have a plentiful and robust harvest. And if should you doubt that Yahweh can accomplish what he wants through his chosen implement, no matter how dinged up that witness may be, don't ever doubt him. Now, in all fairness, God cheated in my case. He went in all guns blaring, just so that there would be no chance that we wouldn't succeed together. Our collaboration has been enabled by the seven spirits. That's why this program is called Chakmah Choter. If you look up what is said about the Choter, both Dode, David, and Yeshaya, Isaiah, devoted entire chapters to presenting the nature of this individual when he would arrive and what his attitude and attributes would be so that he could accomplish this mission. And specifically, we're told that he has the seven spirits of Yahweh. Yeah, I was saying, yeah, you want to hang around there, big boy. You just see if Yahweh has the ability that he can influence the reaping of a harvest, or if it's cut short, if he lacks that capacity. So then you will perceive, you're going to see, you will witness whether this individual can in fact be selected. Yeah, he found me. Might not have been much to work with, but we managed. I may not have been in a position where I was had to be wooed because I just immediately recognized who it was that was asking me to do this, and I chose to engage. Yeah, I did. I didn't fight Yahweh at all on it. Good decision. So I was selected. I did, in fact, choose to engage. And now I am here looking you in the eye, speaking directly to you. And we are succeeding. Just as Yahweh said. It has happened. It is happening. Just as God had promised. Yahweh is true to his word. Always. So, mock me if you want. Slander me if you want. Say, oh, yeah, sure. You're making all sorts of claims. Well, I'm not making the claims. Yahweh's making the claims. You don't like the claims? Take it up with Yahweh. See how that works out for you. I'm not making any claim. I'm acknowledging that Yahweh made these claims. You should too. Well, it is unwise for us to question whether Yahweh will fulfill his obligations and do as he has promised we clearly are in a superior position than was Moshe. We have over 1,000 pages of proof text to scrutinize, which serve as validation when Moshe was just beginning to scribe God's story. And this is likely why Yahweh was a bit coy with Moshe, telling him that he'd have to wait and see if he had selected and engaged a herald, if he had found a bull who would succeed, even if he would choose to engage and encounter God's wayward children such as they are. This then suggests that Moshe and I will meet one day, and we're going to share a laugh at long last. And in that way, he and we will have further proof that Yahweh, as always, is true to his word. Now, that may not have been much fun for Moshe, but it was a joy for those of us who, well, behold how adept Yahweh is at using the past to frame the future. God is really good at this prophecy stuff. Here's a story that is completely and tragically embarrassing for the children of Israel, for Yahweh, and of course for Moshe, who had an emotional meltdown. And yet God told this story in such a way that it gives us grit and conviction and the knowledge that we will prevail and that God has written our future in our past, even in the Torah. And that Israel, there will be some of you who witness the ultimate fulfillment of this, who will listen and who will recognize that Yahweh was able to find someone who would cultivate these final two harvests, and that you're going to be there with us. It really doesn't get a whole lot better than that. This is the joy of closely examining and carefully considering every word that Yahweh scribed for us. Well, Moshe walked out of his tent to speak, likely parroting what Yahweh had told him. But remember that he was so distraught that just moments ago he had asked Yahweh to kill him. So this would not have been his best effort. And while that perspective is interesting, what's particularly telling is that Yahweh was not actually present during Moshe's meltdown. God listened and spoke, but he did both from a distance. He is just now descending. So Moshe went out and he spoke to the people, communicating through the words of Yahweh. And he gathered 70 individuals of the elders of the people, so that he was present and standing with them around the tent. Then Yahweh descended, diminishing an aspect of himself within a cloud of smoke and water. And he spoke to him as he took away, holding back and reducing a portion of the Ruach spirit that, for the benefit of the relationship and to show the way, was upon him, so as to provide it to the 70 old men. And he was comparably inert and and active in a restful state with the Spirit among them. And they were as uninspired prophets of their own initiative, but they contributed nothing, not adding anything. Bamidbar in the wilderness, Numbers 11:25. Did you process all that? Understand the implications of what God just said. First, Yahweh was not a witness to Moshe's meltdown. He spared his co-worker of that indignity. He would descend at this point, and even when he descended, he spoke to him, not them. And so when Moshe went out and he spoke to the people the words of Yahweh, he gathered these 70 individuals together, the elders of the people, so that he was now present and he was standing with them around the tent. Which had to be a very bitter pill, because every one of the children of Israel was antagonistic. Moshe didn't have a single ally. Aaron was religious. Miriam, his sister, was plotting against him. And we're going to find out that Yahushua ben Nun was clueless. Caleb had yet to speak. So he gathered them together, and he was present with them outside of this tent of the witnesses, just as Elia and I will be one day soon, just a matter of, 4.5 years from now. And then Yahweh descended, diminishing an aspect of himself, as he will, as part of this final push to convince his children to stop being antagonistic and to return to him. And he spoke to him as he took away, holding back, reducing a portion of the Spirit that, for the benefit of the relationship and to show the way, was on him to provide to the 70 old men. Do you think Yahweh has a one Spirit that he can share? Is there just a Ruach Kodesh, as the Spirit Mom cult claims, and that Spirit Mom, and that it's just one of her? She's the second person in their Trinity, Mommy and Daddy. Only got one. Well, doesn't the Choter have the 7 spirits of Yahweh? So if there's the Choter has the 7 spirits of Yahweh, why was Yahweh so stingy? Why did he have the one Spirit split 71 ways? It's interesting, isn't it? He didn't give each of the 70 a Ruach, did he? He gave them each 1/71st of a Ruach. And he diminished the Spirit in Moshe, which is to say that they were through. He wasn't disappointed in Moshe. Moshe did the best he could. It's to say that God and Moshe were going to go through the motions and get them to the promised land, and that would be it. So there's just one Spirit shared among the 71, wherein the case of the Choter, there's 7 spirits given to the one. Because Yahweh can't give up now. He can't walk away. There can be no meltdown. There can be no giving up. The harvest is approaching. And With that said, is that as a result, he came to be comparatively inert and inactive. But it wasn't just that Moshe was no longer traumatized by these children of Israel. He was calmed by Yahweh, put in a more restful state, but essentially decommissioned. And because of the Hitpael stem, the 70 were not influenced by the 171st of the Spirit that they were given. They were not. They didn't benefit from this outside influence of the Spirit at all. And then we hear Lo Yashaf that they contributed nothing. They added nothing. Why? Because Yahweh speaks through one person at a time. And even though that message would be muted, he would only speak through one person at a time. The others, 70, would do nothing. Now, with only two notable exceptions, a fellow named Eldad and another one named Medad, or if I may be so bold, Eldod and Medod. Yahweh's presence was subtractive, not augmentative on this occasion, which is not surprising under the circumstances. He would diminish the presence of his Spirit within Moshe, reducing it 70-fold. Apart from God's beloved and loving friend of Dod, God's beloved, that's Dod, and the loving friend of Dod, that would be the herald, none of the others were of any benefit. Just two. Moshe became somewhat listless and inactive, taking a breather. But all the while, the others contributed nothing. Now, this is to suggest that Yahweh had turned the page and he was moving on, recognizing that there was nothing more to be achieved through the Israelites of the Exodus. He would go through the process and he would deliver them to the promised land as promised, but that would be it, at least up until God's beloved and Dod's devoted friend, Eldod and Medod, because they would be filled with the Ruach, and they would perform on behalf of the final remnant of these people. I want to share with you next one of the most remarkable statements that you're ever going to hear in the Torah, particularly if your ears are open, your mind is receptive. I know when I first translated this, I was stunned. I was just, took my breath away. But then there were two individuals who remained, and they continued to exist to the very end. And they were spared on behalf of the remnant, Sar, who were preserved for the remainder, continuing to the very end. This is the Nifl imperfect, third person masculine singular. They carried out and would receive the benefits associated with being spared on behalf of the remnant over the course of time. Within the encampment as a favor. Within the camp from Ma to consider the implications of Chana, to come down to pitch a tent, to camp out as a merciful favor. The one man's name is Eldod, God's beloved. Eldod is beloved of God from El, God, and Dod, beloved. Are you familiar with a fellow named Dod? And that he is Yahweh's beloved? The one's name that would exist filled with the Spirit, serving as a prophet on the benefit of God's people, was God's Dod, Eldod. And the second's name is Medod, cast as Dod's devoted friend. To ponder the implications of the beloved's adoring hand serving as my hand brought forth for friendship, from Ma to question and Yadad cast in this role as a loving friend, and Ani, my hand, and Dod, beloved. God's Dod, and the one cast as Dod's devoted friend. The one's name is Eldod, and the second's name is Medod. And the Ruach Spirit, the breath and mind of God, she came to rest, settled, and continuously remained upon them. And they were among those who were copious writers. They did not emerge from the tent, not at this time, as they were not leading an exodus for the illuminated family at this very moment. Wallo Yatza Ha Oel, they did not leave the radiant home and go out of the shining dwelling place at this moment. No, they would do so later. Therefore, they continued to speak prophetically, communicating the message of God, independent of the others, fortuitously and compassionately within the encampment. Bamidbar, in the wilderness, Numbers 11:26. I have some appreciation now why I wanted to share this with you. God spoke of the role that Dod would play in the lives of his children, enabling the harvest by fulfilling Pesach, Matzah, and Bakorim, which is the only way that we are allowed to engage in Shabuah, and also in the Teruah in gathering. It is only for those who benefit from what Dod has done. As the lamb who was beaten and killed. And of course, the bull will prepare the final remnant of Yisrael in this same manner as he is beaten and killed. But it is this friend of Dod, the one cast in the role of his devoted supporter, that will reintroduce the king to his people, that will make them aware of what Dod has done, and particularly in the second of his 3 lives, as he was the one who was crucified in 33 CE as the Messiah and the Son of God, fulfilling Passover as the Lamb. He was the real Messiah. He is the real Son of God. He is the actual Savior. He is the authentic and returning King. None of which was known until the one cast in the role of supporting him, of supporting Dod, was chosen by God. and that God enabled the successful harvest through him. This is, in fact, the story of how Yahweh's Ruach enabled the lamb and the bull, Dod and Yada, Medod and Eldod. Are you listening? Do you know what kind of gift God just gave to us? When Moshe stumbled and the elders of Israel failed, Yahweh brought in reinforcements by the way of the great and final Zeroah, Eldod and Medod, Dod and Yahweh, Dod and Yada. They would not only be filled with the Spirit, the Ruach of Yahweh would remain on them. Remember we were told about Dod, that the Spirit of Yahweh came upon him and would never leave. And we are told that in the case of the Choter, his Bashar herald, that the 7 spirits of Yahweh, including the very Spirit of Yahweh, would come upon the Choter. Well, now we know that the Spirit of Yahweh will never leave him. As a result of her inspiration, they would be and have been prolific writers. No one wrote more than Dod with his Mizmor and his Mashal. Well, that is until Medod would write 35 volumes, being more prolific as a writer than anyone ever speaking for God. We would be given the opportunity to read what was written and expound upon all Eldod had to say, particularly as Medod would analyze it and share it with us. And so it would be with Moshe, Dod, and Yada, writing more than all of the others combined. From Moshe, the Torah, from Dod, the Mizmor, and the Mashal, and from Yada, the 35 books of Yada Yahowah. Even as you can hear and see probably that tail that was wagging in the background, even Asher, my beloved yellow lab, agrees. Prophecy fulfilled. It's one of the many, many, many reasons we know that when God said that he is going to accomplish all these things, there's no alternative. I'm not claiming to be this individual. God is claiming that I am this individual. There are no possibilities of anyone else. No one has done these things. Well, and that their contributions would be for another time. Eldod and Medod did not emerge from the tent, not then. But those they represented would 400 years thereafter. What I did not expect, however, is that while we know that Moshe and Dod were the most prolific and powerful of the prophets, it is insinuated here that Dod's helping hand also has some prophetic attributes, even if only limited to speaking for God at this time. But that's a humbling realization that comes with considerable responsibility. This is therefore Yahweh's great favor of compassion for those who want to camp out with him forevermore. Tellingly, it was the scattered sheep who recognized that God's beloved and the one devoted to Dode were speaking for Yahowah. And so they, the youngest members of the covenant family, immediately made the connection between what they were saying and the Torah, so that they moved in Moshe's direction. They would even confess that this was relevant and it was corresponded to everything that had just transpired, and that there was a straightforward connection to be made through these correlations. I will share this with you, and it'll be the conclusion of our program. It's this is an emotional thing for me to convey. It is so affirming, so uplifting, so empowering, so enabling for God to share words of this import with us. And the scattered sheep, represented by a young man, YAHOWAH, the wayward flock comprised of adolescents, served as an attendant for the one to whom the flock actually belongs. And he ran, moving very quickly. He immediately and swiftly ran before Moshe. The counterpart who withdraws too conspicuously in form, making known by announcing in a straightforward fashion so as to confess the corresponding connection he was making with Moshe. Wa Nagad La Moshe. To openly acknowledge before Moshe, expounding upon what had become conspicuous and forthright. And he said, with unfolding implications throughout time, Eldod, God's beloved, and Medod, cast as the loving friend and supporter of Dode, his uplifted hand. They are speaking prophetically, demonstrating and demonstrably conveying the very message of God, independently and apart from all others. They're doing so beneficially and mercifully within the encampment, Bamidbar in the wilderness, Numbers 11:27. And yes, they would. And yes, they have. Are you listening? Thank you for partaking this very special episode and sharing it with me as we have conveyed the YAHOWAH blog.